recite the Lord's Prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Thank you all. Thank you. We're going to change the order around this morning a little bit. Instead of doing the staff report next, we're going to move to item number 4, Cameron Parish Coastal Restoration Project with Mr. Pat Landry. How are you, sir?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Welcome. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Pat Landry. I'm with CPRA. We're the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority. We're the state agency involved with all coastal restoration and flood protection across the entire state. I work in the Lafayette Regional Office. We're involved with all the projects in southwest Louisiana, which would encompass Calcasieu, Cameron, Vermilion, Iberia, and St. Mary parishes. Ryan Boryak asked me to come and give you an update on all of the projects that we have ongoing in Cameron Parish, so that's what I'm intending to do here. It's not going to be all of the projects, but it's the majority of them. A couple of them in construction, we've got some in design, and we got some in planning. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. The first slide that you see is the projects I'm going to be talking about. We've got about 10 projects in Cameron Parish that I'll be discussing. The majority of them center around Big Lake, with a couple of them to the east into the Mermentau Basin. First project I'm going to talk about is a project that's currently in construction. It's the Oyster Bayou Marsh Creation Project. That's a project where we're taking sediment from the Gulf of Mexico, about 5 miles out in the Gulf of Mexico, and we've pumped it into an area just to the south of West Cove. And you can see it there in yellow, the general location of the project. We started the project in December of last year. We started pumping in these 4 or 5 marsh creation cells that you see there, just to the north of Highway 27, Highway 82. And we started the pumping of the sediment back in June. We recently completed the pumping in September. This gives you an aerial view of marsh creation, of the 4 or 5 marsh creation sites. That MCA number 3 is the largest one. Here's another slide that shows in construction. You can see the dredge pipe coming up from the Gulf of Mexico and pumping sediment into marsh creation area number 3. This was probably in about July or August of this past year. One more slide here gives you an idea of what the sediment looks like after we've pumped it. That was an open water area. That area now is completely full of sediment, and pretty soon you'll start to see vegetation growing later on. So some of the project features. All told, we built about 815 acres of marsh. We built 14,000 linear feet of terraces. The total cost of the project, this is the construction cost, is almost $24 million. Weeks Marine was the contractor. So the project status, we started the project last December, and we started pumping in June. The pumping was completed in the first week of September, and currently the contractor, Weeks Marine, is demobilizing the site. We had real good productivity on his dredge. We were getting about 50,000 cubic yards a day, which is very good. Normally we see about 20 to 30,000 yards. But we did have some days where he was hitting 80 to 100,000 yards a day. And I think that has a lot to do with the efficiency of his dredge. He had a new dredge out. And also the sediment. We had a real good sediment source 5 miles out in the Gulf. It was like toothpaste coming out of the dredge pipe. So we had really good sediment, we had really good production, and for that reason he finished ahead of schedule. So, and because we got a pretty good bid from the contractor, we were able to actually add some additional acreage to the project. Originally, we were going to build 500 acres, so we ended up with about 800 acres. We did a change order. We added some additional sediment to the project. So currently, we're looking at the oil field service road. There's an issue with it staying underwater or having a little bit of water on it that makes it inaccessible for the duck hunters in the area. We're looking at, we just got some cross sections taken by our consultant, and we're going to be elevating the road some to make it more accessible. But so we still got 3 or 4 months left to take care of that issue. But as far as the dredging, the pumping, that's all complete and that's all being demobilized. So currently we're just in the process of taking a look at the service road and taking care of that issue. The next project is the Cameron Creole Marsh Creation Project. It's another marsh creation project where we're taking sediment from the Gulf, from Big Lake, and we're pumping it into that area that you see there in yellow, just to the east of Calcasieu Lake. In this particular project, the 2 marsh creation cells that you see there in green, one of them is on Miami Corporation to the north, and the marsh creation site to the south is on the wildlife refuge area. The Barrow area is what you see in blue, so we're going to be taking sediment from that blue area and pumping it into those 2 green marsh creation areas. All told, we're going to build about 617 acres of marsh, a little over 200 acres on Miami, with a larger cell, almost 400 acres on the Cameron Prairie Refuge. We bid the project recently. It came in at $8.2 million. The low bidder was Apollo Environmental Services or Strategies. They're out of Beaumont, Texas. We bid the project back in June. We had a pre-construction meeting about 3 weeks ago on September 13th. We issued the notice to proceed at that time. The contractor is just beginning his work. He just started a week or so ago. A magnetometer survey was recently completed, and we expect him to start building containment levees in the next couple of months. And all told, the project will be completed by the end of next year. The Rockefeller Refuge Shoreline Protection is another project where we're going to take rock and we're going to protect the shoreline, about 3 miles of shoreline along Rockefeller Refuge, more towards the western end of Rockefeller. The slides that you see right here were a demo project that we completed in 2009. We tried 3 different alternates to see the best feasible options to try to protect the shoreline along Rockefeller Refuge. That area experiences 40 to 50 feet of erosion per year. It's one of the most highly eroded areas in the entire state of Louisiana. And we all know the importance of Rockefeller Refuge. So this particular slide that you see here is one of the alternates, and it was putting some lightweight aggregate in bags, and you can see in the top left picture where it's being lowered down into the water. And then on top of those bags, large rock was placed on top of that. And so that particular demo alternate was the one that was selected for this project. This is the one breakwater that was constructed back in 2009. This area was flown probably about 3 or 4 years ago. You can see it's still holding up. You can see that the land is starting to gravitate or migrate towards the rock breakwater. So we're going to have about 3 miles of this rock along the shoreline in this particular project. So we're going to start the project near Joseph's Harbor, those of you familiar with Rockefeller Refuge, and we're going to go in a westerly direction for 3 miles. It's going to be a segmented breakwater, meaning that it's going to have gaps in it, but they're going to be overlapping so that you don't have any really land exposed to the elements. Again, it's going to be about 3 miles long and built on the -2 contour. And the total cost of the project was about $19 million. We recently bid the project. LeBlanc Marine out of New Iberia was the low bidder. We actually had a pre-construction meeting with them yesterday. The project was bid in July, and they're going to start, assembling materials and ordering rock and getting the bags in place for the lightweight aggregate. But the actual placement of the breakwaters probably won't start until March, and a lot of that has to do with the winter months, the low tides, trying to get their barges into that area. So they feel confident that with the construction time allotted in the project, that starting the actual breakwater construction in March, that they should be able to complete the project in early 2019. Another marsh creation project that's in design, that's close to being complete, is the Cameron Meadows Marsh Creation Project. That project is located just to the north of Johnson Bayou. It's our most westerly project in coastal restoration. This particular project, we're going to take sediment from the Gulf of Mexico, about 3 miles out in the Gulf of Mexico, and pump it into that area that you see there outlined in red. And then there's kind of tough to see, but the purple squiggly lines just to the right of that is a terracing field. That's also a component of the project. So all told, we're going to build about 400 acres of marsh. We're going to construct about 12,000 linear feet of terraces. And again, the offshore borrow area, it's 5 miles out. I had said 3 miles earlier. We're anticipating that the entire cost of the project is about $38 million. That's the fully funded cost. That's construction, that's engineering, permitting, land rights, that's everything. So the project was approved through the QIPRA task force. It's a funding mechanism that we participate with federal agencies. That funding approval was completed in January of this year. We're securing land rights now. There's several landowners in the area. We're beginning the permitting of the project, and we hope to start construction in early 2019. Another marsh creation project is in the Mermentau Basin, just to the west of the Rockefeller Refuge, and that's the South Grand Chenier Marsh Creation Project. In that particular project, we're going to take sediment that from the Gulf of Mexico and pump it into those 2 green polygon areas that you see on the screen. This particular project, all told, we're going to build about 430 acres. Both of the marsh creation areas are a little over 200 acres, and the borrow source is the Gulf of Mexico. We're estimating that the construction cost is going to be between $16 and $17 million. We actually bid the project earlier this year. Unfortunately, we only had one bidder, and that one bid came in about $10 million over our estimate, so we could not award the project. We didn't have the money to do that. So we went back to the drawing board. We're making it, we're rebidding the project in late 2017 or early 2018. So we've changed the scope of the project up, reduced the footprint a little bit in hopes of rebidding it and getting maybe more bidders and a little more competitive bid so that we can award this project. The Cameron Creole Freshwater Introduction Project, it's an area that's located to the east of Big Lake and just to the south of the GIWW. In this particular project, there's several components to the project. The white squiggly lines that you see are a terracing field where we will build terraces in that open water area. That white vertical line that you see coming down from the GIWW is the Monsanto Canal, where we're hoping to introduce fresh water from the GIWW into that open water area that stays fairly salty. One last component is about 8,000 feet of rock shoreline along the southern bank of the GIWW in that area. So also, we're going to build a sheet pile structure in the Monsanto Canal. It's going to have 8 5-foot square openings with flap gates on the downstream end. We're going to build 8,000 feet of rock along the GIWW and 120,000 linear feet of terracing. We're estimating about $15 million for the construction cost. Currently, the project is at about a 95% design level. NRCS is the federal sponsor. Again, this is a QIPR project, so we're partnering with a federal agency. This particular project is NRCS, is our federal sponsor. And we will request construction funds in December at the QIPR Tech Committee meeting. And the way that works is that there are several projects that are, once they're ready for construction, they have to compete for construction dollars at the QIPR Tech Committee meeting. So it's imperative that the locals from an area go up and support their particular projects because this particular project will compete against projects from Terrebonne and Lafourche and St. Bernard parishes. All told, there will probably be about 6 or 7 projects eligible for construction, and normally there's enough money to award maybe 2 projects, maybe 3. So not every project will get awarded construction funding, but we're hoping that this project will get selected in December. The Rabbit Island Restoration Project. Rabbit Island, as many of you know, it's a small island that's located in the west coast portion of Calcasieu Lake. It's a bird nesting habitat area. You can see a blow up of that particular island. There's a lot of open water area, a lot of erosion, historical erosion. So this particular project is being funded with some BP oil spill monies, and what we're looking to do is pump some sediment into the island to rebuild the island, build some dunes, and also to protect that northeastern shoreline, which is has quite a bit of erosion coming from a lot of wind and wave fetch from Calcasieu Lake. So in this particular project, we're going to build dunes. We're going to build about 200 acres of marsh creation, and again about 2,000 feet of rock shoreline on the northeastern edge of Rabbit Island. We don't know the cost yet. We've just started the design of the project, so we're just in the preliminary phases. So that hasn't been determined yet. We issued a notice to proceed to Royal Engineers in early August. They're in the process. They've actually started data collection and a preliminary E&D. And we are currently looking at a borrow source, or looking for a particular borrow source. We're investigating different sites. We've talked about the Cameron Loop. We've also looking at Calcasieu Ship Channel. So that is a major hurdle that we're going to need to get over. But we've been in meetings with the Corps. We've been in meetings with Ryan, with Cameron Parish. So we are investigating where we're going to get the borrow to pump into Rabbit Island. The No Name Bayou Marsh Creation Project is currently in design. That's an area that it's located, as you can see, just to the south of Big Lake. And in that particular project, what you see in green there is the general location of the borrow area. I mean, not the borrow area, the marsh creation area, that we're going to take sediment from some source and pump it into that open water area. The borrow area that you see to the left was originally thought of as the upland disposal area of the Corps, that we were going to take the sediment from there and pump it across the East Fork and put it into that marsh creation area. We're not going to be able to use that borrow area. It's not enough sediment for us to enough sediment for what we need for this particular project. So again, like the Rabbit Island project, we are investigating borrow source areas. All told, we're going to benefit about 500 acres once the project is complete. We're going to need about 3.5 million cubic yards of sediment. We're estimating about $24 million for construction. The project status, like I said, we're investigating borrow sources. Again, the Cameron Loop is an area that we are looking at. It is a distinct possibility, hopefully, that we could use the Cameron Loop and use that sediment and put it into this particular project. We anticipate requesting construction funds from the QIPR Tech Committee in December of next year. As you recall, on the other project, we were requesting construction funds for the Cameron Creole project where we're taking the sediment from the GIW for this December. But on this project, we're looking for December of 2018. And we hopefully, if we get construction funding, we would start construction in 2020. One last project, and it's a huge one, is the Calcasieu Salinity Control Project. This project is being funded 100% with BP oil spill monies. In this particular project, we're going basically from the lower end of Calcasieu Lake several miles to the north. This particular slide right here is turned on its side, so the Gulf of Mexico is to your right, Lake Charles is to your left. This particular project, what we're looking at doing is trying to, I guess, channelize the Calcasieu Ship Channel to bring it back to something closer to what it was historically several years ago. When it was first dug, it was 250 feet wide, and now it might be 1,500 to 2,000 feet wide. So with this particular project, we're looking at, and it's mainly going to be rock that is going to be placed along the banks of the Calcasieu Ship Channel in strategic locations. All told, there's about 14 different locations. The largest location is to the right. It's to the east side of the ship channel. You can see an artist rendering right here of what the rock shoreline, the rock breakwater would look like. It would be constructed up probably to an elevation of 3 or 4. There would be gaps in the rock breakwater because this particular area is about 4 miles long, but there would be gaps for boaters to get in and out of that particular area. But all told, there's 14 structures. 10 of them are on the east side and on the west side, and 4 larger ones are on the east side. So all told, we're going to benefit about 12,000 acres, and we're trying to prevent or keep as much salt water coming into Calcasieu Lake as possible. And that's the main crux of the project. You just have an open water area now where you're getting a lot of exchange from the Gulf of Mexico into Calcasieu Lake and then into the marshes that we're trying to protect. And so that's the crux of the project. Again, the project is 100% funded with Restore Act monies. That's BP oil spill monies that you hear about and read about so much. The engineering design is going to be about $36 million. Currently, the data collection, modeling, and the design are underway. We're hoping to get 15% design completed by the spring of this year. They're looking at an aggressive outreach and engagement program with people in Cameron Parish, that beginning probably in February of this year. They are looking for input from the locals, from the landowners, from the stakeholders, because this is a huge project. This is the largest coastal protection project that we've ever underway in Cameron Parish. We're looking to submit the permit in spring of 2018. The total cost of the project is going to be estimated to be about $263 million once it's all said and done. And again, that's all 100% funded through the Restore Act. So with that, that concludes my presentation. If anybody's got any questions, we've got a couple of other projects that are just beginning design, they're in the planning phase. I didn't include them, but you know, these are the main projects that we're working on. As you can see, we're investing in Cameron Parish. We know how important it is to you people. It's important to us, and so our office, our regional office, we're working on some O&M projects, some operations and maintenance of some completed projects. We recently completed some rock breakwaters at the 3 of the 5 water control structures on the eastern rim of Calcasieu Lake. So we completed that earlier this year. So you know, we're trying to protect the things, the investments that we have spent here. And so that's what our office mainly does, is operations and maintenance. But these are the larger projects that we're involved with. And so If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer.
I got a couple of things. Y'all can use the Calcasieu Loop for the dredging, that way it sure help us out a bunch.
We hope so too.
My second thing is, on the Intercoastal Canal, east of Conway to Blue Bridge, we got a lot of breaks in the levees along the Intercoastal. There's water's coming down on us from up north and different places into the Intercoastal, and it's sheet flowing across Miami, into Luscianier, East Creole, and we having a flooding problem unreal. How hard would it be to maybe get a meeting with your staff and with Ryan and his staff or whatever, and try to come up with some kind of way we can fix them breaks in that levee to keep that water from sheet flowing us so bad?
Well, we can certainly set up something with you guys. That's not an issue. We can certainly do that. You know, I will say that, you know, the Corps of Engineers is the, you know, they would have to be involved with this, and so we would have to get with them as well. But we would be happy to meet with Ryan or any of your staff to go out and take a look at those issues, and we could certainly set up meetings with the Corps of Engineers and see what we could do.
Yeah, we got, you know, people in East Creole that stay underwater for days and weeks at a time with all this water coming on us now like it is. You know, everybody cleaning out their ditches and doing all that, this steady flowing on top of us.
Right.
That would really work if, you know, we can get with Ryan and get with everybody and get us some stuff set up to try to solve some of the problems.
We can set up a meeting with Ryan and set up a field trip and go out and take a look at those areas.
Great.
Okay.
Not only that, you probably get the dredge of the intercoastal to bring that water level down, where these big boats don't have to carry such high water in the intercoastal.
Okay.
Make the marsh creation.
All right. Okay.
That's close, real close to the Sweet Lakes marsh creation.
Right. Okay.
Just know that's right.
What was what was that first project you showed us?
Oyster Bayou?
The first project?
Yeah. Oyster Bayou Marsh
What was
Creation.
the cause of that marsh degradation? Was it saltwater intrusion, storm related, all field related?
I mean, it's probably a combination of a bunch of things, but yeah, probably a saltwater intrusion was a huge thing, and then of course, we've had Rita and Ike, and yeah, all of that, yeah, definitely.
I was thinking about that, and the project, the last project you showed us, the big project, when would that construction start?
The Calcasieu Salinity, you know, it's going to probably be a little ways down the road because, you know, it's a, you know, they're going to have 15% design completed in early next year. I mean, it's probably going to be 2021, probably 3 years from now before, you know, we would see some, you know, throwing rock and stuff. Things just
Why
take.
did it take that long?
It's just, there's a lot of issues. You know, you got modeling, we're doing modeling right now. We got to look at all the effects of what this will do. Permitting, you know, permitting just takes us a real long time.
You know, when that thing was up, when that levee was up back when I was a kid, there used to be freshwater lily pads that grew outside of Grand Bayou before there was ever a structure there or not. And the thing was that was all a borrow, you know. And now they have to build levees, put weirs, and do all this crazy stuff to protect the marsh. And my thoughts is, why not, a long time ago, they did decide to just fix what Mother Nature, or fix what had tore up at the channel, and you might not even have to build those levees and put all those weirs up and lose all that marsh.
All right.
I just, it's just thought.
Right. And you'll notice in these slides, you know, there's been a shift towards marsh creation. That's been a big shift, and we're still an advocate for shoreline protection. You know, we always, and I know when they've had master plan meetings, public meetings, the public has always spoke up about protecting from the outside in, and so that is in the master plan, shoreline protection along Cameron and Vermilion Parish. So
It's like, to me, it's just like the projects you're doing now. You create, you go in the water you still haven't stopped, you know,
Right.
the influx of that salt water that they're storing.
Right,
That
right,
would be, seem to me, you would want to do that first.
right.
We'll go get Marsh up, maybe then you'll last long. Here's my thought.
Well, that's always a subject for debate. Ryan, you've been involved in a lot of those meetings as well, and, there's a lot of different varied opinions on that, but, I think it went to marsh creation quite a bit, but it's coming back around to shoreline protection, a lot of it, because we see the effects of it, we see the importance of it, and, I know your rock breakwaters out here near Holly Beach has helped out, and hopefully that beach that we built 4 or 5 years ago is helping out as well. Passed by the other day.
It's gonna wash away if you don't do some rocks like you did down the road.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that beach ain't moved since
Right.
you put them rocks.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just ain't moved.
right. And that was a project that we had proposed early on, breakwaters, like on the east, like on the west side, to protect the beach that we had just built, because we invested $40 million of construction, state dollars, for that 5 miles of beach that we built, and so we certainly wanted to protect our investment, but
It'll end up in Texas.
well, yeah, it keeps migrating. Yeah, exactly.
Thank
Any public comment on this item or a different item?
I'm sorry?
Anybody has public comment on it? No, okay. First of all, I wanted to thank Mr. Pat because during the storm event that felt like a month, but that was only a few days, every afternoon and every morning, Mr. Pat was in contact with me to get an update on the parish. How were we doing? Where were we seeing water? The road impact statements and any activities that we had was channeled from him to his boss, Johnny Bradbury, and direct to the governor. And so there was an open line of communication throughout that entire event. And so I appreciate Mr. Pat facilitating that on our behalf. I also want to thank him for coming today because I think sometimes we get caught up in the day-to-day aspect of it. I know I most certainly did. And whenever I saw Mr. Pat give this presentation, I guess a couple weeks ago, I was awestruck because you get caught up in it, you don't realize what actually is going on. So just to summarize what Mr. Pat said today, you're looking at $145 million in state and federal projects just through Whipple. $145 million. These are ongoing or recently constructed projects in our parish alone. When you add in, that's to the tune of 3,300 acres. Okay? When you add in the ship channel project, you're looking at $408 million that is allocated to coastal projects in this parish. That is amazing. It is. And I know from time to time we hear that, oh, the project's in the wrong place. We need to do more of this. We need to do more of that. But I appreciate the working relationship that we have with the CPRA because I do feel that we communicate our needs and they hear our needs. And so we look forward to a great continued working relationship with their agency and hope to get even more.
I got a couple questions for you, Mr. Landry. The Big Lake project, those two projects on Miami and Rockefeller. What's going to be the means of the dredging out of the lake into the marsh area? And is it going to be a surface, or is it you're digging deep, or what?
They're going to be bringing a barge across Calcasieu Lake in a particular corridor that's been marked off, and we've been in contact with Wildlife and Fisheries so that we're not disturbing oyster beds, oyster seed grounds. And so it's going to be it's a corridor that they're going to bring their dredge, their barge, and
Are they digging, or is it?
Well, they may have to dig a little bit, just depending on the draft and, you know, the tides. They're hoping not to, but if they have to, you know, we do have contingency in the plans that, you know, they would dig a little bit in order to get in close enough that they can put their dredge pipe. Yeah.
And I also have to echo Mr. DuPont's statement about the duties that would be helping us a tremendous amount. But also on the beach protection, the coastal protection that your plan is for, what was it, 3 miles?
The Rockefeller Refuge?
About 3 miles.
Right.
Is there any plans, I know we have a study going on right now, because we have some serious erosion problems, you know, on our beaches. And just wondering if there's anything else out there that they're looking at, just coming on down the beach and trying to protect.
Well, I guess to address Rockefeller, from Joseph's Harbor going westward, all told, to the rest of Rockefeller, it's about 9 miles. We just didn't have the money to protect. You know, we bid out what we felt we could, we had the money for. Fortunately, the bids came in a little bit lower than we had anticipated, so we're anticipating that we're going to extend the 3 miles further to the west. So hopefully we can build another maybe mile or so with the monies available. And we've gotten, you know, I believe Wildlife and Fisheries has contributed some money. I think Cameron Parish has contributed some money to the project, so that you know, through a joint partnership, we're able to build more of a project than was in the original footprint, which was 3 miles. So hopefully we can go 4 miles. But to address what you know, we don't have anything specifically right now on the books for shoreline protection. I know in the master plan, we've got shoreline protection all the way from Southwest Pass in Vermillion Parish, all the way to Calcasieu Lake, to the ship channel. It's in the master plan. Now that means we don't specifically have anything like, you know, we're going to design something from here to here. But if we, you know, can find some monies, when it's in the master plan, that means the state supports it. And so, you know, that could be down the road, but we don't have anything currently on the books for shoreline protection beyond what we're doing at Rockefeller Refuge.
Okay. I don't mean to be questioning that. We do appreciate the Clipper and CPRH being here and working and taking care of the project, and that's a tremendous amount of projects that they're taking care of. And we do appreciate it. Just a question that we need to ask.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And you know, to elaborate on your question, Mr. Curtis, the parish is in a 50-50 cost share with the Corps of Engineers on a planning assistance to states program to provide data, to provide guidance to the CPRA to say, here's the specific areas that have higher erosion rates, here's some alternatives for construction techniques that are relevant to those areas. And so we're trying to be proactive and identifying all those features, spending a little bit of our money to give the CPRA the information they need to move forward on a lot of it. So some of this falls on us, and I think we'll have an attentive group once some of this data comes in. Yes, sir.
Mr. Landry, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
That's the information we really needed to see, and that's a lot of projects.
You're welcome. Anytime y'all want an update, just let me know. I'll be happy to come by and give you updates on our projects.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Ryan, if you want to go back to the top, or you want to go keep going down? Okay, we'll move on to item number 5. That's what you want to do, Brian?
Yes.
Okay. Review district tax renewals for April 28, 2018 election date. William?
Yeah, this is just for y'all's information that we have tax renewals coming up for we'll be working with these districts to get their resolutions and all that. But just to let y'all know, waterworks District 2, that's in y'all's area, in Hackberry, 5.72 mil tax renewal. Drainage District 3 in Cameron area, 7.5 mil. Drainage District 4 in the Creole area, 3.68 mil. Recreation District 7 in Creole area, 3 mil. And Recreation District 9 in Grand area, 3 mil. We'll be working with those districts. No action will be taken today, just to let y'all know in those areas there'll be renewals coming up. And we'll work with those districts to get their things that we'll have to take action on later when the time comes. Just to let y'all know. And that's it.
None of the villages increased.
No, I mean, that would be a new tax. These are just tax renewals of their existing buildings.
Okay.
And that's it, Mr. Garza, just to let y'all know that that's forthcoming.
I have to apologize, I didn't recognize some people that were here today, and we appreciate them being here. Judge Richard, thank you very much for being here today. We also have, Mr. Chris Sullivan with, Mr. Higgins, Clay Higgins' office. I think he just stepped out, we appreciate, him being here. And we got, Mr. John Canix with the, school board, and, we also have, let's see, who else we got here? Mr. Charlie Atkins with the school board. Thank you for being here, Mr. Charlie. We also have, Ms. Jennifer Jones and Ms. Cindy, McGee with, Chenier. And we have, Mr. Tom Barrett. Thank you all for being here today. Okay, we're gonna move on to, item number 6. Talk about change order for, the courthouse renovation project. Mr. Randy? Realize you have some, you want more money?
Good morning. Brian asked me to come here and talk with you all about this last little batch of change orders that we have with concern at the courthouse, and just kind of answer any questions that you have, and so we explain to you where we are and why we've had some of these. Main thing is we're dealing with discovering conditions that were unforeseen until we started tearing everything apart, and getting into the little nuances that we, for instance, a roof drain that's in a spot that's going to be in the big middle of a room that was in a wall. Until we tore the wall out, we didn't know the roof drain was there, and the ceiling's 8 foot high, and we can't go horizontal with it, so we decided to, relocate it, and there's some cost with doing some things of that nature. There's a big mound of concrete in the back where we're gonna be putting that new exit stair that was uncovered when we started digging, and it's right where shafts go for that stair tower. So that has to get removed and, and taken care of. And then another thing is that I wanted to talk about, it really has to, y'all have already approved some change orders for the removing of the plaster ceilings and whatnot. I kind of want to explain to you what that was all about. When we first, we knew that where there was a plaster area between, you have the concrete structure, and then there was an old plaster ceiling below it. And when we looked at the fire rating that we were going to need, so we didn't have to sprinkle the building, that assembly would have allowed us not to have to sprinkle the building. Well, when we started tearing everything out, a lot of that plaster was damaged, and it was going to take, and that when we got prices back and forth with the Palmer's office, and determined that it's best if we take it down because it was so damaged. So that's some of the cost in this and what was previous, and what we've also discovered too, the thickness of the concrete is such that it's not, when we take that plaster off, it's not thick enough to give us our fire rating between floors. So in here again, in lieu of going back and having to sprinkle the building, we're gonna go in certain areas, now, which is weird, some of those floors are thick enough. Where the jail floor is, that the appendage comes out, that area is thick enough that we don't have to fire rate. But in the original forecast part, between floors, we have to, and it's kind of a, if you look at the structure, go over and look, it's cast in place concrete, and so you have a rib kind of effect. Well, the rib is deep enough, of course, but the waffle or the bay in between where there's just a floor slab is not thick enough to give us our fire rating. So we found a spray-in fireproofing that we only have to put in just some of those areas. So if you look at the difference or the delta in doing that kind of work in lieu of, if we would have to have sprinkled this building, and the sprinkler probably would have been in excess of $200,000 plus, because you'd had to go back and sprinkle the elevator, everything. And this gets us, you know, taking care of some unforeseen things that we've been getting along. But if you look at and you walk through it, where we are getting to a point where I don't know what else that we could uncover. So hopefully we're getting to the end of these kinds of unforeseen conditions. There's a couple of items in here that are taking some ceilings and having to do some things for clearances. So those windows, if you look at them, are really high to the ceiling, and we're trying to maintain as much of the original effect of the interior and exterior look. So some of those plaster ceilings were not the heights we thought they were, so we're having to here again, taking some of those out so we can maintain new ceiling that comes in so it's not below where the window is. And we would have to deal with something like that. So here again, if you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to discuss it with you. We're going to be here meeting with some of our engineers later after the meeting. If you want to walk through, I'd be happy to show you all what we're talking about. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy.
Any questions for Mr. Gillow? We appreciate it.
Okay.
We want a quality product, so.
That's what we're hoping, you know, we're gonna give you. It's I really feel it's gonna be a showplace when we get done. It's gonna be really nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Move back to, ordinance.
It's on the main track.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy.
Sure.
We will move to item number 7, talking about beachfront district vehicle restriction ordinance. I know we have some erosion problems in this area. What we have right now, we have a study going with the Corps of Engineers and other groups that we issued funds to, and that study should be completed in approximately 5 months, Ryan. And I think if nobody objects, we move table this until the time the study comes back in and they give us a answer to our question. Is, what would be the best solution to the erosion problem? We know what the best solution is, and that's going to be protection to the beach. But again, we do have money invested in this study, and we feel that we need to let this study be completed and then make a decision from that point. Any questions? Yes, sir.
In reference to the planning assistance to the states program, this initiative was brought up in our June meeting when some of Mr. Doxey's constituents came to a police jury meeting and some of your constituents and voiced their concerns about shoreline protection issues. You directed staff at that meeting to identify any funding sources that existed to try and address these issues. Through some of the discussions that day, we acknowledged as a staff that these were long-term solutions. There were some comments made that day that not only long-term solutions should be looked at, also short-term solutions were needed. I think that the beach board tried to identify some of those short-term solutions, and I think their concern has been heard, and it's very relevant, the suggestion. The planning assistance to the state grant specifically is going to develop with Cameron Parish and the Corps of Engineers working together. It is going to prepare a comprehensive coastal erosion management plan that will identify the causes of the shoreline erosion, the development options, evaluations of the development options, and then a final document that will show conditions from the Sabine River to the Superior Canal. And so we will have a very thorough document that we will be involved every step of the way to, again, try to have this information in a clear, concise manner that will provide us our best opportunities to move forward. We will hopefully still be back in this same predicament at a future date. We will, at some point in time in the future, have to address this issue in the event we are ever awarded coastal project funds. No question about it. It's a state law. A coastal integrated project cannot have vehicular access, period. And so I think that the jury was proactive. We heard from Mr. Landry. We heard from a lot of the residents. This process has been put into play. The Colonel of the Corps of Engineers has signed off on it. Our kickoff meeting is October 23rd. That'll be our first meeting to organize the existing literature and begin that process. So I think that, it's important to know all the efforts that have been put into place up to this point were certainly beneficial, because all these discussions eventually will amount to a better product. The discussions for, the discussions against, and so all of this will be incorporated hopefully in the near, at some point in time in the future. But I did want to give an update on that planning assistance to the state program.
Well, we do appreciate the work that the board has done, Mr. Dox has done, and several other people have done. They worked very hard to come to a conclusion. We just feel that with the monies that we have spent to try to get this study done, we need to get that completed before we move forward. So,
And have some of the major erosion issues identified
right,
by the technical experts.
right. Thank you very much. Chris, we did recognize you. I apologize.
I'm sorry about that.
For listening this morning, but this is Chris Sullivan. He is with Clay Higgins' office. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we need to review the agenda then. Now, I gotta go back to that. You gotta go back to that.
No.
I thought we were through.
You let Pat Landry talk for 45 minutes. Now it's time to pay the piper.
Go ahead.
Friday night after our public meeting, you learn a lot on Facebook, or Spacebook, like my grandpa calls it. I think from time to time, I take it upon myself maybe to defend some of the good things that we have going on in this parish. A lot of times it doesn't seem like it. We get caught up in the day-to-day and the arguing and the defending, and we lose track of what exactly is taking place around us, whether it's because of us, assisted by us, prevented by us, regardless. So my update is one item today. It's going to be a general status of Cameron Parish statistics. At the end of the year, the staff provides you administrative update of all of our goals and objectives. We're just moving into the final quarter of 2017, and we have a timely report from the Louisiana Department of Revenue and the United States Department of Labor Bureau of Labor Statistics. The parish's unemployment rate in June of 2017 was 3.9%, the lowest in the state of Louisiana. Okay? The average weekly wage for an individual in Cameron Parish is $1,491 a week. Again, the highest in the state of Louisiana. The national average is $1,100, and the state average is $906. So, $500 above the state average, nearly $600 above the state average. The average weekly wage in Cameron Parish is higher than 49 other states' average weekly wage. Only the state of New York has a higher average weekly wage, and that's $1,541. We're $50 behind them. According to the Louisiana Department of Revenue, in 1 year's time, the sales tax generated on behalf of the state, not your sales tax because you don't collect the sales tax, on behalf of the state, it increased 78%, the highest in the state of Louisiana, and that is revenue to the state. The next highest parish was Iberville, which only increased 44%. For an individual taxpayer basis, so let's look at our residents. We experienced the highest average individual income tax payment per taxpayer in the entire state of Louisiana. $1,987 per tax return. When you look at the data, the second highest was Lafayette at $1,829. So we were $200 higher for our residents' tax payments for income tax. Ascension Parish was third. West Feliciana Parish was fourth. St. Tammany Parish was fifth. St. Charles Parish was sixth. Terrebonne Parish was seventh. Orleans Parish was eighth. All these larger metropolitan areas and more populous parishes, and we are providing more per taxpayer than all of them. So even though it looks at times that things maybe aren't rosy and things aren't as positive as they are, we certainly can't shortchange our issues and our problems. We still have them. But the data being compiled by agencies, not our staff, are showing that there are some positive markers that we are making. We can't quit. We still have to be progressive. We still have to be forward thinking. But the fact of the matter is there are data sets out there that show decent things are happening in this parish. And that's all I have. That's it.
What did you say?
I can come up with something else if you all
You're
want.
done?
He said he was done.
You're done?
Done.
Well, I guess, Master.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. That is something people don't realize. We'll move on, Road Bridge, Mr. Lewis.
Good morning. If y'all would like, everything that I have is on the afternoon agenda. If y'all want to just wait till we review the folders.
Anybody got any questions, Ms. Emmons?
Yes, we can.
All right, we'll move on to OEP.
Good morning. First of all, y'all know we have a tropical storm Nate that's probably headed to the Gulf by tomorrow afternoon. Just let everyone know I will be hosting a news briefing, weather briefing at 2:30 in the OAP office this afternoon. So we done invited all the critical infrastructure and EMS to attend if they'd like to. If they can't make it, they'll get the email with the slides and the summary of the briefing. So we're gonna keep your eyes tuned to the news, because yesterday it was heading towards Florida, then late afternoon it was Panhandle, Florida, and this morning it's central Louisiana. So been a crazy year. Anyway, Well, we had the last past month, we held a 911 meeting. I had to, was purchased a new recorder for the 911 phone lines and the sheriff's office phone lines, all emergency calls along with the radio transmissions. The previous system we had went out and it didn't have the capabilities to, since we upgraded our communications to everybody having their own frequency. We purchased it off the state contract from EBS out of Baton Rouge. Cost was about $15,000. So, yeah, went up. Any other communication merchants is up. That's not a bad price on state because I did bid it out and there was $20,000 plus, but final state contract and to get you with the yearly maintenance too. So, which is about $2,800 a year. We conducted the LAPC meeting. We completed and created our training exercise plan for 2018. Completed the risk survey for Cameron Parish, and we implemented our NIMS creation plan for 2018. That's with critical infrastructure EMS. All I got to also become a member of the Ember Guard, which this consists of all critical infrastructure throughout the state and the FBI. My security level clearance will be up a notch. I'll be getting classified information, and this is all about protecting the critical infrastructures, possible threats. So that these meetings are held quarterly. Other than that, that's all I have. If you have any questions?
Any questions, Mr. Brown? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Darrell, do you have anything? No. Move on to housing. Mary?
I just want to let y'all know we closed on 3 more adjudicated properties this past month. And also, I'm going to be closing on one of my houses in Grand Lake for 525, and it leaves 1 left, and then the state wants to close the program by the end of the year.
Good. Good, you move right along. Thank you. Permitting.
I don't have none at this time. If, when we review the agenda, if there are any questions on permits, I'll see if I can answer.
Anyone else?
You had done economic development, and you usually ask for an update on Cameron Fisheries as part of that, which I have, so.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
sorry,
have anything
Jenny, I
new to
just don't
report,
remember.
but she can update y'all on
And I think I sent you a copy of a memo I did about the insurance issues, which I did not find any violation of this agreement through the, as far as insurance obligations. The portion of the bid process that Cameron Fisheries is required to do is done. They've sent that to the architect. So it's now in their court. They do have to assist the architect with that, but I've gotten weekly updates from the architect on how they're doing on that. They're trying to combine some of the bids. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you, ma'am. Hey, Sheriff. Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
All right, now we can review.
Number 7, consideration of resolution for West Caption Cameron to increase the monthly per diem rate.
The West Cameron Hospital Board got a legislative authority to raise their per diem for their board member. And CalCSU has adopted a resolution to support them, to allow them to raise their per diem. They're asking us to $300. Yes.
And then 8-inch water line.
Yeah, that was recently completed water line. It was with LGAP funds, and it's completed, it's been accepted, finalized, then we need to transfer it to the water district for maintenance. And we have an agreement to do that the board will also have to adopt, the water board.
Yeah.
And then I guess the, number 9 was just the new sign for the lights. What is the Sabine River Amend Program? What operation plan? Was the change in something or what's the clue?
We received a request, our staffs and the staffs of the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury and Beauregard Parish Police Jury, all think that the operations and maintenance agreement as it stands today for the Sabine River Authority, in times of high rainfall, you know, we acknowledge that there are certain federal thresholds that have to be met before they open a certain percentage of these structures. Between the three parishes, we are trying to bring about awareness and request that the federal government take a look at that process and see if there is something that we can do. You look at Johnson Bayou, for instance, just taking, you know, not addressing the Starks area and the cemeteries in Maryville. Just look at Johnson Bayou after Harvey. 3 days after the event, which lacked a storm surge, everything flooded. Smith Ridge, Middle Ridge, and a lot of that had to do with the levels in the lake, and a lot of that had to do with the water being released at Toledo. And so I think the effort in this particular instance is going to be amongst a few of the parishes, both in Louisiana and Texas, I would imagine, to take a look at how that process works and see if something can be done to mitigate that, the potential damage. Basically, it's a partnership amongst our three parishes trying to get some answers, maybe some progress.
Any other questions? Move right into executive.
No, we'll have to go, can't go, I do need to add, I mean, the next meeting won't start till 11:30, so we'll have a chance for a little break. I need to add a lease. First, I need to add on a lease for the Hackberry solid waste site to exercise the option to renew for 5 years, a current lease. For the Hackberry solid waste site, I need to add that to the agenda to exercise the option to renew the lease for 5 years. And so, if that's okay. No.
You got any, Earl?
Yes.
Do you have any background on these lease renewals, or what they cost?
Yes, I'll have, I mean, this lease will be for,
You don't have to tell me, I just.
no, I mean, it's gonna be part of the motion, it's for $2,761, or is payable up front. And on this lease renewal, it'll be as part of the lease that was signed previously, it'll be $2,761 plus CPI index increases. So it's like, you know, 11%. So, sir?
The walking track and.
The walking track's a state lease. That one that's on the agenda, it's a state lease for $100 a year. And that's where in Hackberry, the
Yes,
and they're writing a lease.
I was just wondering what this lease.
It's $100 a year.
That Creole, ball field, Creole fire station.
That's the lease that we renewed for a year, and we wanna, yeah, we need, the first step would be to get an appraisal to make an offer to buy that property.
That was the one that
Yeah. So we extended it for a year, and now need to get that together to see if we can work out something with the landowners.
Anything else? Anything else?
Motion to go on executive session. Yes, sir.
Have a motion by Mr. Park, second by Mr. Beard, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Park?
Yes.
Mr. Park?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dupont?
Yes.
I say yes. Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mr. Hicks? Mr. Doctor?
Yes.
All in favor? Now in executive session.
Finally, tell y'all later, it's about somebody bragging on the light. Somebody from the Baton Rouge station. who's worked with him. You find out where else.
Make a motion, come back out of executive session.
Second, motion by Mr. Park, come out of session, second by Mr. Quinn, all in favor? Any opposed? Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mr. Park?
Yes.
Mr. Dupont?
Yes.
I say yes. Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mr. Hicks? Mr. Doxey? Yes. We're now out of executive session, no, action taken. We are now dismissed.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Yeah.